In the late 60s and early 70s, thousands flocked to Esalen. Only a few years before, it had been an obscure fringe institute. Now it became the centre of a national movement for personal transformation, the human potential movement.
So it became magnetic. People wanted to join this stream of exploration. Within 7 or 8 years, there were about 200 of these centers in America, looking mainly to Esalen for the leadership.
I feel so liberated.
Really? It's fantastic.
And it took on a big political agenda. You could not separate personal transformation from social transformation. The two go together.
As the movement grew, the leaders of Esalen decided to try and use their techniques to solve social problems. They began with racism. They organised an encounter group for white and black radicals. Both groups would be encouraged to express their inner racist feelings which had been instilled in them by society. By doing this, they would transcend those feelings and encounter each other as individuals.
I started a series of encounters called Racial Confrontation as Transcendental Experience. We thought that we wanted to get that kind of black-white confrontation so you could really get down to see what was between the two races, not by backing off and trying to be polite, but by going right into the belly of the beast, of this beast of racial prejudice. And these were extremely dramatic. These were the toughest workshops ever convened at Esalen Institute.
I'm looking at you, Whitey. You got clothes on. You got shoes on.
You're just so sure looking at me, huh?
You got the goddamn police in the neighborhood.
Really? They're not my police.
You got a governor. You got a mayor.
Oh, really?
You got the president. You got ambassadors.
You can vote, too.
You got debts in Vietnam. That's the benefits of slave labor. You got buildings, skyscrapers that you dominate and control economically and politically. And tell me that it's not yours.
It's yours, too.
Then the blacks all got together and attacked the whites. And they just let us have it. What they call it was peeping somebody. Peeping somebody means peeping into their secrets, into their phoniness, and so forth. Like the white liberal. Oh, they really got onto the white liberal, you know.
So don't give me no shit about I'm free. You're a goddamn liar, you white pink son of a bitch, you. Yeah, I want to know what you came down here for. You want a black buck, huh?
Yeah.
You looking for a stud? Huh? Well, what did you come here for? You're sitting there with your legs all gap wide open showing your drawers. Now what did you come here for?
The black-white encounter groups were a disaster. The black radicals saw it as an insidious attempt to destroy their power. By trying to turn them into liberated individuals, Esalen was removing the one thing that gave them power and confidence in their struggle against racism, their collective identity as blacks.
For my reason. For your reason. Now dig this. Your reason for being here is different from my reason.
So the human potential movement turned to another social group who they believed would benefit from personal transformation. Nuns. And this time they were more successful. The Convent of the Immaculate Heart in Los Angeles was one of the largest seminaries in America. A group of radical psychotherapists approached the convent. They wanted to try out their techniques for personal liberation on individuals whose identities were defined by a series of external rules which they had deeply internalized. The convent, anxious to appear modern, agreed to the experiment.
And we did weekend encounter workshops for several hundred Immaculate Heart nuns. Nuns who were reserved, and they tended to be more reserved than other normal people, were told, don't be so reserved, let it all out. You're a good person. You can afford to be who you really are. You don't need to play the role of a nun. You don't need to keep downcast eyes. And prudence is an oversold virtue.
You're trying to assert yourself, trying to find out who you are, who you're becoming. At the same time, you're trying to live a life of dedication, of service, and you're trying to make all these things fit into who you are, and you're just, you know, it's such a turmoil at times that you just blow a gasket and do silly, crazy things, you know. Running around the orchard and stealing oranges and taking Cokes out of the refrigerator and crazy things.
I felt like I was being a hypocrite, and I wanted people to respect me for what I was, not for what I was wearing, and so I'm glad for the change.
You feel frightened, but you'll go on.
Oh yeah, I'm scared to death, but it's worth it.
The experiment began to transform the convent. The nuns voted to discard their habits in favour of ordinary clothes. But the psychotherapists found they had awoken other forces.
Solid.
One of the things we unleashed was sexual energy, the kind of thing that the church had been very good at restraining was no longer to be restrained. One sister who was a member of the community, she got the idea that she could be freer than she had been before, and she seduced one of her classmates and then seduced the mistress of novices, who was an older woman, very reserved, and her program of freeing this older woman was sexual. She drove her to the store, and when they drove back and drove into the garage, she leaned over and gave her a big kiss on the lips, and thereafter sister, who had perhaps never been kissed before, was ready for more.
The effect of the experiment on the convent was cataclysmic. Within a year, 300 nuns, more than half the convent, petitioned the Vatican to be released from their vows, and 6 months later the convent closed its doors. All that was left was a small group of nuns, but they had become radical lesbian nuns. The rest gave up the religious life.
They gave up being nuns?
They did, yeah, they became persons.
By the late 60s, the idea of self-exploration was spreading rapidly in America. Encounter groups became the centre of what was seen as a radical alternative culture based on the development of the self, free of a corrupt capitalist culture.
We just want the freedom to be ourselves, and that's for love, for experience, positive way of life. We don't say that you're wrong. We just want to be free to be what we want to be, or what we find ourselves to be, as we continue to search ourselves.
And it was beginning to have a serious effect on corporate America, because these new selves were not behaving as predictable consumers. The life insurance industry in particular was concerned that fewer and fewer college students were buying life insurance when they left university. They asked Daniel Yankelovich, America's leading market researcher, to investigate. He had studied psychoanalysis.
The life insurance business, more than any other business at the time, was built on the Protestant ethic. You only bought life insurance if you were a person who sacrificed for the future. If you lived in the present, you had no need for life insurance. So they had some sense that maybe the sort of core values of the Protestant ethic were being challenged by some of these new values that were beginning to appear. And I was really astonished at what I found. The conventional interpretation, the dominant interpretation, was that it had to do with political radicalism. But, you know, it was clear to us that that was a mask, a cover. The core of it had to do with self-expressiveness. That this preoccupation with the self and the inner self, that was what was so important to people. The ability to be self-expressive.
Wow, what a feeling! 300 miles to go. What out of sight.
Yankelovich began to track the growth and behaviour of these new expressive selves. What he told the corporations was that these new beings were consumers, but they no longer wanted anything that would place them within the narrow strata of American society. Instead, what they wanted were products that would express their individuality, their difference in a conformist world, the very things that US corporations did not make.
Products have always had an emotional meaning. What was new was individuality. The idea that this product expresses me, and whether it was a small European car, the particular music system,
Relaxation.
your presentation of self, your clothing.
For immediate energy from our muscles and relaxation.
These become ways in which people can expend their money in order to say to the world who they are. But the manufacturers, they had no idea of what was going on, really, with consumers and in the market at large.